Hey friends, it's Simon Hurley and welcome to another video. Now cover plate dies can be a little bit more expensive, so today I'm going to show you how to use one of my cover plate dies and really stretch it to get a bunch of use out of it. Without further ado, let's get into it. For today's video, we're focusing on the Candy Stripes cover plate die, and it has two different pieces. This inside piece, which if you use by itself, it'll actually cut the window out of any larger sheet of cardstock. So you get this awesome design, and you can put it on a larger piece of home decor or a bigger card design. You can also repeat the design. So because it has no sort of border on it, all you need to do is continuously line this up and move it down in your project, and you can create a larger piece as well, which I just love the versatility of that. But then of course, if you add this frame around it, so if you just tape these two together and then run it through your die cutting machine like that, it'll cut an A2 size card panel with this design in it. For this first card, I'm keeping things super simple with a piece of stark white cardstock, place our plate in, and then run it right through. And when it's a larger die like this, I like to run it back through just to make sure everything perfectly cut. I'm gonna go in here and add just a little bit of liquid adhesive all over the back of this die cut. It's pretty easy to do since the lines are pretty thick. You just wanna make sure you get all of those stripes covered. To line it up, I like to start in one of the corners, line it up with the edge of the card, and then it should line up perfectly with the rest here. We've got a little bit of time to wiggle it around to make sure that it's lined up perfectly. One of my favorite things to do with die cut backgrounds like this is just make it super simple, tone on tone, so we can put something a little bit more detailed on the top. And now I'm going to share a really cool way to step up this design. I'm going to take another one that we cut out, and we want to adhere it down like this. So I'm going to use the side that you would normally kind of face upward, and I'm going to add some liquid adhesive down. All right, and then remember we're adhering this one upside down so that the stripes are going the opposite direction. I'll line it up and then place it down onto our card. And check this out. It creates this gorgeous plaid pattern, and this is just using that one die, so you get a ton of versatility from it. I also love this background cut out of a simple color of cardstock. So I'll go in here and place this down, and since it's an A2 size already, I won't use the border die. Then again, I'll go in with my liquid adhesive and add a little bit all along the back side. Then again, because I love that tone on tone, I'm taking a piece of the same colored cardstock. I'm gonna line it up once again with the edge, and then it should line up the rest. I kept it with just the one layer of stripes instead of doing the plaid, but I love this tone on tone look, especially on that darker green midnight cardstock. Now, of course, you can use cover plate dies as a stencil, and this one is no exception. I'm going in with the sticky Clearly Amazing mat from Scrapbookcom, and I'm going to stick down a piece of black cardstock. Then I'm going to go in with the piece that we've already cut the background out of, and I cut it out of a larger piece without the border. This makes it so that I can line it up on here, but we won't go over the edge. And then we can stick down the edges on the sticky mat so that everything stays in place. I don't know about you guys, but I love to use purples, blues, and red for Christmas. So I pulled out some Lunar pastes in Midnight Snack, Triple Berry, and Bee Sting. I'm gonna take each one of these colors and apply it down onto a piece of plastic acetate as kind of a palette. And I'm going to apply them down pretty thin because we don't need much for this technique. These colors are just gorgeous, and this is super simple to do using the palette knife from the paste tool set. I'm using the Dome Foam blenders, and I'm just going to go in here following the lines of the stripes. If you will go against it, it'll kind of bend these a little bit. So if you want to, you can spray this down with a little bit of pixie spray to hold it in place, but it's just super simple to follow the line of the plaid and add this Lunar paste down. The reason I like to apply it thin like this is because it dries really quickly, but it still gives all of the amazing color and shine onto your surface. Next, I'm gonna bring in a little bit of Triple Berry, and we'll blend that color in with the red. So just taking it from the center and kind of swiping it back into that red area to blend them together a bit. This mix of colors together is just gorgeous. Last but not least, we're using a bit of the rich Midnight Snack color. I love this color. And I'll just bring it in and again, kind of feather it into the Triple Berry. And then same thing, bring back in a little bit of that purple if you need to help blend the two colors together. All right, you guys, and now when I lift this off, check out the amazing colors that we got on there. All right, now I'm gonna go in here and heat set this quickly. You don't have to, I'm a little impatient though, but it's really simple and quick to dry since it's such a thin layer. And then check out all of that beautiful shine, and we can move on to the next step. Now again, I love this background how it is, but if you want to step it up a notch, I've cut it out again, and I'm going to flip it over this time, line it up with the edges of our design, and then place it right back down onto our sticky mat. Then I'll go back in with the same blending tools, but this time I'm going in a different direction. So I've turned it so that it's really easy for me to follow the grain of the stripes as I'm color blocking this design. It's really simple because I'm just adding the same colors down in the exact same spots. So where there's red, I'm gonna add more of that bee sting. This stenciling technique is super cool, and I think doing it in the opposite direction like this is really gonna step this background up a notch. Last but definitely not least, I'm adding in my midnight snack and blending the colors together. And again, if we need more purple in there to blend it together, we can always go back in with the purple. It's super easy to work with. All right, now for the reveal, we're gonna peel this off, and oh my gosh. And when it quickly dries, you get all of that amazing shine and this really beautiful thick plaid. I love it because you get the reverse of this plaid design since we stenciled through the openings. To clean out these blending tools, I go in and spray some water down. You can also remove the foam and wash it underneath your sink. And I just kind of press this out until the foam becomes white again, and then it's easily reusable and it won't become crusty. You want to clean these right away. Your foam should look something like this when it's clean. Then with any of the excess, we can go in, and I've added some water, and then I'm just going to dip a piece of black cardstock right into these beautiful colors, and you get this stunning mixed media type of cardstock, which I really love. Trust me, I know it looks like a hot mess right now, but I'm gonna heat set this with my Ranger heat tool, and all of the shine will start coming back as that water dries off of the surface, and you get these beautiful and intense colors. Check out all of that shine once it dries, and this is just a great piece to die cut from or use as a background. I love using paper as a stencil because then I can go in with the border die, line it right up, and I'm just going to add a little bit of mint tape to hold it down while we run it through our die cutting machine. And now we have a beautiful and shiny die cut from our scraps. One thing I also love to do with dies is create an embossed background. To do this, I'm going to follow the exact instructions on here. So I've got the platform base and the platform top. This is using the universal plate system. Then I'll add down the E plate, which is my rubber embossing mat. I'll place down a piece of stuck white cardstock, and then I'm going to place the die right onto the cardstock. Lastly, I'm placing the D adapter plate down, and then I can run this right through my die cutting machine. Because the rubber mat, it doesn't cut fully, but instead it just impresses the design in to give a really beautiful kind of embossed and textured effect. I'm gonna use a variety of stamps from my new Christmas collection with Ranger to finish off some of these cards. All right, now I'm going in with the Halftone holiday stamp set again. I'm using the large poinsettia from this set and inking it up with a little bit of Love Struck ink. And then I'll go in using a little bit of Game Over to add some shading. And I'm just gonna go all around the edges and roll on a little bit of this darker colored ink pad. Then I can stamp this right down onto my surface, and I love this stamp set because there's such minimal effort into it, but because there's all of those tiny little dots making up the image, it gives you beautiful shading and kind of colors in that image already for you. Then I've grabbed 3 of the leaves from the set, and I'm gonna use a little bit of Viper to ink them up. And then to add some shading, I'm gonna use a little bit of fake plant and roll that right on to add some extra color. All right, then I'll stamp that down. And there we have our leaves, and again, they're beautifully shaded with those little dots. All right, then I'm going into the coordinating Halftone holiday die set, and I'm just going to kind of flip this poinsettia around until I find the right lining up. I'll go in using some mint tape like I always have, and then it's super easy to just tape this down. Same thing for these leaves. I'll find the coordinating dies, and then line them up and tape them down using some mint tape. And then I'll run this right through my die cutting machine, and I love these because it really saves a lot of time that you would usually have to fussy cut, and it makes such a nice even border around the images. And when these come out, it's easy to just pop them out, and you've got that beautiful image. I love these. All right, and now with the poinsettia, I'm just gonna go in right in the center and use a little bit of the excess Love Struck ink that I have on my blending tool just to add some depth to the center here by blending it in and making it a bit less stark white. All right, then I'm gonna add some foam tape right on the back to pop this up. Then it's super easy to just add some liquid glue down to these leaves, and I'm just simply going to tuck them right underneath the poinsettia. I'm not a floral expert or anything, but I kind of cluster them together in little groupings. So this one I'm doing a little grouping of 2. Then I usually go kind of across the flower and add 1 leaf in over there to kind of balance it out a bit. I'm going to simply finish it off using the Happy Holidays, and I'm going to stamp this down in black ink. And then I'll throw over a layer of clear heat embossing powder for a bit of extra shine. Here's a look at that finished card. I love the double plaid effect by cutting it out twice and reversing it. It just gives it so much texture and dimension to the background. And then finishing it off with that beautiful poinsettia really brings it to life. I love this bird from the Winter Wonderland stamp set, and I'm going to stamp him down using some VersaFine Claire Nocturne ink to get a nice jet black outline. We'll stamp it right down onto our stark white cardstock. Since this ink stays wet long enough, I'm going to throw over a layer of clear embossing powder to trap inside the lines. Then I'll heat set this until it's clear and shiny. To color this in, I'm going to add some ink down onto my craft sheet, and I'm going to create kind of a palette of colors that I want to use so I can watercolor with them. So just swiping the ink down onto the surface. Then I'm just going in with a paintbrush, and I'm going to start off with just a layer of water down onto my image. And this is going to get it ready to take color and make sure that it blends nicely without the color just sinking right in. Then I can go in with a wash of my lightest color, which here is Clear Skies. Because we added that water down, this color is going down really nicely and blending smoothly on that surface. Now, once we've added that first layer of the color down, we can go in with a color that's a little bit darker. Here I'm using some No Diving, and we can add it in where some of the shadows would be. So I'm going to add some onto his wing right here. You can kind of do it where different body parts meet as well. So up top on his head where it meets the beak, down on his belly we'll give him a little bit of color, and then on his tail. And if you need help blending this together, add a little bit more water and less color, and then kind of dot it in between there, and it'll help blend those two tones together. For the berries, I'm using a little bit of Love Struck, which is this kind of pinkish red color. I think it's a great Christmas red. Then again, to add some shading, we're going in with Game Over and less water, and we'll just add a little bit down to these berries. For the leaves, I'm adding a bit of Psych, which is this beautiful yellowish green color. It's so nice and bright. To add some more dimension to Psych, I like to go in with a little bit of Viper, which is kind of a darker version of that color. Add a little bit of shading, and really bring these leaves to life. Now, of course, you could keep it as simple as you want, but I think adding shading to some of these things really kind of make them look a little bit more 3D and give the image a lot of depth. The super cool part about this release is it has coordinating dies for all three of these stamp sets. So I picked the one out that matches that bird, and I'm just going to line it up. It's really easy to just make sure you got kind of an even white border all the way around the image. Then I'll tape it down with some mint tape to keep that right in place. And I'll run that right through my die cutting machine. I love it because it even cuts out the little white spaces in between and does a great job leaving only a little bit of a white border. I've added some foam tape, and then I'm going to add my bird right down onto the background. I'm going to do some embossing, so I'm going in with my anti-static powder tool to make sure nothing sticks. And then I'll use my Versamark ink, and I'm going to stamp down the sentiment that says Seasons Tweetings from that same Winter Woodland stamp set. Then I'll throw over a layer of white heat embossing powder, tap off the excess, and then I'll heat set this until it's nice and bright white. And there is that finished card. I love that rich and elegant background with the tone-on-tone dark colored stripes, and then using that bird to finish it off and give it a really elegant look. For this next card, I'm using those beautifully shaded ornaments from the Halftone Holiday stamp set. When it comes to the ornament string, I love these Simon Hurley Create acrylic blocks because they have a nice centering line, so I can just line it right up on there to know that it's gonna be nice and straight. For this ornament, I'm gonna go in using a little bit of Love Struck. I want it to be kind of a red color. And then I'm going to go in using a little bit of Game Over for shading. I'm sticking with the same kind of color theme that we did in the background. Then I'll stamp this guy down. For the next ornament, I want to use a little bit of Triple Berry, which is another color we used in the background, and then finishing it off with a little bit of No Diving for kind of a two-toned effect. Stamp that down, and there we go. These stamps are super cool because they're comprised of a bunch of little dots, which gives them a natural shading even when using one ink color. For the strings, I'm using a little bit of Versamark ink because I'm going to heat emboss these to make them metallic. So I just want to stamp down 2 of the strings, and then I'm going to use some liquid platinum embossing powder, throw that over top. This is kind of a mix between a gold and silver. Once again, I'm using the coordinated dies, and this has a little bit thicker of a neck here. They're a little bit different shapes as well, you'll notice. So find the right one that matches, then I'm going to line it right up, making sure there's an even border, and then I'll hold it down using a little bit of mint tape. Now this is where it's important that you had the line nice and straight. We can just bring in the die, line it up right in the center there. All right, then I'm going to adhere these ornaments right down onto our background using a little bit of foam tape to add some dimension. And these little strips can easily be tucked underneath and follow all the way up the card. The Versamark ink again to stamp down the Merry Christmas sentiment onto some black cardstock. And then I'll add down my white embossing powder right over top, tap off the excess, and if there's any more on here, I find that lightly blowing on it kind of gets rid of most of that. If you flick, sometimes too much falls off. And here's a look at the finished card. I love this shimmery background. That lunar paste is just so beautiful. And using that die as a stencil really brings it to life. Using this embossed background, I want to create kind of a nighttime winter-like scene. So I'm using some blues and purples, and I'm purposefully going in with blending brushes. These are Gina K's blending brushes, and I'm just going to start softly blending onto the surface. I'm creating a little backdrop for some of my stamped critters. And by starting off with these blending brushes, we can start with a really light color and kind of build up our blending and fade it out really nicely. And by doing this blending, it really highlights the embossing that we did and brings all of that amazing texture to life. Then last but not least, I'll bring in a little bit of Crown Me, some purple at the top, just to add a different color variation to it, and I love kind of purples, blues, and reds for Christmas tones. I'm using some Slippery and Wet Lunar paste to add a little bit of shine, so I'm going to add this right down onto my acrylic block, and then I can add lots of water down to my acrylic block as well, and I'm going to kind of mix this together to create a much more liquidy paste. Then I'm going to pick some of this up and I'm going to start tapping it on with my brush. As you see here, it creates some really awesome kind of star effects, and that shine is going to really show through. And even though we added water to that lunar paste, it still has that great shine to it, which is just beautiful. All right, there's lots of great critters you could use from the Winter Wonderland stamp set. I love this deer here. He's standing so tall, and I think he's gonna look great on this card. All right, then I'll pull out the coordinating die for this guy, and we'll line it up. And then I'll place my deer down on some foam tape to give it some dimension. And there we have our finished card. I really love how this one turned out with that night sky on the candy stripe embossing. It's really cool to take the dies and use them to create embossed backgrounds. And then of course, finishing it off with that adorable deer. All right, you guys, I hope you really enjoyed this video. There's a ton of ways to use this cover plate die, and leave me a comment down below on which one was your favorite. Also, down below is a full supplies list of everything I used today, so if you use those links, it really helps support me when you go shopping. Thanks so much, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!